All right, you can see it. All right, so good afternoon. Welcome to Mastering the Must-Haves. We're going to take a look at how to design your online courses to meet Anthology's compulsory standards. There are 16 compulsory standards that need to be in every online or hybrid course, no matter what. In total, there's, I believe, 49 different standards within the rubric, but these are must-haves that have to be present. I'm Nicole. I'm the Director of Distance Learning. And we're going to go ahead and get started and get set up for today. I have guided notes for you. That's what that handout is. You can use it. You can disregard it. I'm someone that I'm always taking notes on things, so I like to make that available. If you have specific examples you want to share as we go along, please do that. And it's a lot of information. You're going to see a lot of pictures, a lot of suggestions. Don't panic. Most of these people are already doing in online courses and also on their face-to-face courses because they're just solid pedagogy. And teachers that have good pedagogy have a much greater chance of success of moving content online and carrying that over. They just know how to teach. One of the beautiful things about online learning is there's no one specific way you have to do it, which is fantastic. It allows for a lot of creativity. So I'm going to show you multiple examples sometimes of the same standard because one of them might fit the way that you teach. So Anthology's rubric has basically 4 different areas that they look at for best practices: course design, interaction, collaboration, assessment, and learner support. Course design is the only one that's broken up into 2 different buckets, if you want to call them that. We're talking about the actual physical design of your course, the layout, how to navigate it, and then we're also talking about your instructional design, where you're talking about your teaching pedagogy, your practices, activities, and so on. So I'm going to break those down, and then we'll go through all of these areas and hit the compulsory standards. So starting with course design, looking at structured content, the 2 main keys for that is having chunked content for your students and having clear navigation. Now, by chunked content, they're referring to essentially having manageable segments for your students. You wouldn't take a 16-week course or an 8-week course and put everything in and just say, read all of it. You would go ahead and you would group it most likely into modules. Some people call them modules, some call them weeks, some people organize by units. They're all appropriate. As I mentioned before we started, I teach for both Dominican and Michigan State and graduate programs. So a lot of these samples you're going to see from my courses and how I do that. And this is one of them, of a course that I designed. You can see that I am organizing these by weeks. This is for an 8-week course. And basically, my module title is the week that we're on and the subject that we're going to be talking about. In this example, this is one of my courses at Michigan State. They refer to their modules as units. And again, same thing. We've just got the unit name, and we have the subject next to it. Inside the actual modules as well, it's also important to be structured. So you saw before, I had week 4, active learning, 21st century students. All of my modules inside have the same components. So in this particular module, in every module, every week, I always have one page that has the course and the module learning objectives. Then I have all of my content that I want my students to learn on one page. That's an intentional design choice on my part. I always have an extra page, which is just FYI resources. And then I have a separate page for all of the rubrics that are associated with this particular module. So my students see this exact layout in every single module. There is no cognitive overload. They know exactly what's going to be located in each of these areas. At Michigan State, we organize by the theme of explore, create, and share. And you can see here where I only have 4 pages, this unit has 9. It starts out with a roadmap, and I'll show you an example of that later, ends with a checklist, but in between, we've got the explore, that's the topics we want them to learn about, And then we have the create. Those are the things that they have to create to demonstrate their understanding. And then we have share, because again, they have to share either with other people or they have to share with us as well. Other things that I see in terms of intermodule structure are these two examples. Often here at Triton, I see a lot of this. I see an overview module, all the lectures in their own folder, all the resources in their folder, reading separate, quiz separate, and discussion. I'm not a fan of this. It doesn't mean it's wrong, because remember, there's no one way to do it. I don't like this because everything is segmented. To me, it feels completely cold and doesn't necessarily help the students. There is, I don't know, in my opinion, I like to have my lectures, my resources, my readings all together so that it flows together, so the students understand how everything comes together. For me, this feels more of a checklist. These are just the things you need to do. And again, some people can do that very well. So it all comes back to the design and the person that's designing. This is an example from an old module when I used to teach at National Louis, and they followed this type of rhythm. And because they set it up, I had to follow it. But essentially, they had a page for the overview and outcomes. Then they had activities and assignments separated, videos, the discussion question, and the assignment all lumped into one. So again, no one way that you have to do it. However, for the purposes of the compulsory standards, you have to show manageable segments. And then this is one more that I absolutely love. This is from a horticulture class that was created for online here. What I loved about this one is the structure of the instructor started out, because this is a hybrid, they told you what week, what the topic was, and they told you if it was on campus or online. That's great for students. Then they have their objectives and to-do lists, but then I love the structure of how they put before class, during class, after class. So students knew how to prep before they got on campus, what they were going to be working on during campus, and then what they could do after campus. These don't all have to have big, elaborate projects. In some instances, for soil around us, the after might be, hey, go out and check out your soil sample and see what it looks like in your backyard. And if you want to talk about it, join the discussion. It can be a follow-up. But to me, I love this because it's very connected and it's very student-friendly. And then this was an example from our online pedagogy course here that everyone's required to do. Module 3, for example, you can see that I have all of the pages numbered. So it's very easy for if students say, I couldn't find this, or you've got a typo, and for me to say, well, where is it? They can very easily see 3.1, 3.2, and so on. It also helps create a little bit of accountability for students. They can check off as they go. But again, you can see the internal, we always start with the overview, and then the facilitator contact comes next, then the topics that we're talking about, and then I do have a summary at the end as well, which you can't see over here. In terms of your structure of your pages, one thing I like to do, I like to organize using visual context for my students. So I'll show you on the next slide a screenshot of what this looks like in my actual course. Every single page that has instruction on it, we always start out with why this is important. I don't give them the objective there. I give them this is why you need to know this, just in real speak. Most often I'm teaching practitioners that are classroom teachers or coaches in a professional field about using technology in education. So my why is this important always goes around that. I make the design choice to give them module overview videos so they can log in and I can say, hey, this week, this is what we're going to talk about. This is how much time I think it's going to take you. This is what you need to do. This is what I'm looking for. I try and keep these 3 to 4 minutes long, but it helps them understand how much time they need to devote that week. Then I have a learn section. This is everything that they need to learn, whether it's lecture notes, videos to watch, PowerPoints, whatever it is, that's in this section. The do is what they need to do for me to turn in. And then in this particular course, I've got to decide. That's like an optional extra tool that I provide for them. But this is the main structure that they're going to see in every one of my modules. So they know when they see this symbol, there's going to be a video. I'm going to teach them. This is the work they have to do, and so on. And this is what it looks like in practice. I start off with the picture. I tell them real quick why it's important. Here's the overview video that I give them. A little bit of context, the learn. This is all the content that I want them to learn. You see links out. I have presentations embedded, things I want them to read. And then we get to the do. These are the things that they need to do. And then it'll wrap up at the bottom with decide. Another objective that needs to be met, or standard I should say, is that the design provides clear and structured guidance that helps learners engage with the content and how to proceed through the course. The best way to meet this standard in the rubric is to have an orientation or a start here module. And I'll show you some great examples of this. In mine, I have a course overview. In the course overview, I tell them, this is what you're going to learn. This is how this class is run. This is what it's not. It's not going to be a sit and get and so on. And then my get started page is simply this right here. Here's how you get started. Start by looking through the syllabus. In my courses, they blog. So fill out this form for me, set up your blog. I give them this information as well in pre-course communication. I email my students a week ahead of time so they're not walking in blind. I tell them it's an online asynchronous course. I tell them we're using, in this case, Dominican's LMS's Canvas. And I tell them when you get to Canvas, look for a course shell named. I tell them what the name of the course is. So I am starting to set the path for them so that on day one, they're not fumbling looking for it. And again, this is an example of what one looks like as well. This helps them proceed through the course. Start here. Welcome. Here's your course overview. Please start here. Also, you want to give them clear and structured guidance that helps them engage with the content. There are so many ways you can do this. As I mentioned before, my students blog, so I created a 2-page cheat sheet that if you need help, check it out. Not only do I have a cheat sheet, but in my modules, I have blog resources, I have some background information on multimodality and things to help them. So I'm not just telling them, you're going to create a blog and blog. Now go create a blog. I'm helping them create a blog. Giving them course exemplars. This is also a way that you can help them engage with the content. Tell them or give them examples from previous students. You need an example. You know, in this case, Jessa gave me permission to share, and I give them a link. As an alternative, need an example? Gabby gave me permission to share this. In terms of how I get permission from my students, at the end of all of my courses, I have an optional consent to share work document. It's a form that basically just said, hey, throughout this course, you created some great projects. Sometimes I want to share those. Are you okay if I share them? By and large, almost always they say yes. And I give them the option to say, yes, please give me credit and let me know if you share it. And I'll just send them an email and be like, hey, FYI, I shared, this is awesome. You know, some will say, yeah, go ahead and share it. You don't have to tell me. And the funny thing is some students say, no, don't share my work. Honestly, I've never had a student that I've wanted to share their work say no. The ones that are no are ones that I'm either going to not share or I'm going to say, don't do this. So it kind of works out. And the ones that don't fill it out at all, I just don't use their work. There might have been 1 or 2 occasions where I felt so strongly about a piece of work and they didn't fill it out that I just emailed them anyway and said, hey, what do you think? And in that case, they said yes. I mentioned earlier also guided notes. Tell them what to look for. This is one of the reasons why I don't like the, here's your course readings, here's your lecture labs, that's it. It doesn't help them navigate the content. I don't do this, and I should say we don't do this for every single text or reading that we have students do, but at Michigan State, if we ask them to read a complex piece of work, we create guided notes for them, and we basically say, to support your understanding, we provide key takeaway ideas. This is what we want you to know. And we tell them, this is what we want you to know. And in some instances, we put the page number. Will you have students that will not read the text and they'll just read this? Yeah. You know, will you have some that will be like, okay, now when I'm reading, I'm looking for this. I know this is important. Yes. At the end of the day, for me, it comes down to, am I grading that they can go in and read my assignment because I tell them to, or are they getting the information I need them to get to do the assignment? So this, to me, helps them. It also gives, and I don't want to say an illusion because it's not an illusion, but it shows you have respect for your students and that you are there to assist them, not to be over them, by helping them. Okay, getting into inclusive and accessible course design. Again, you're very well aware of all the accessibility features that we need to include now. So we're talking about inclusive delivery methods, universal design for learning, and so on. The two standards that have to be met for all online or hybrid courses have to do with designing and delivering supporting inclusive pedagogy by integrating alternative options, and then making sure our text, image, and other multimedia are accessible. 1.11 is pretty much almost covered because in Blackboard, using Ally, they will allow the students to create, or I'm sorry, they'll allow the students to download the content in different ways. And basically, Blackboard does this on the back end. There's nothing you need to do for it. So this is a great feature. In terms of meeting it, when your course gets to the peer review committee, one thing I suggest is somewhere have some instruction for students saying, you know, if you need an alternative format, click on this button and see what's available. Most of our students will know it, but it certainly doesn't cost anything to help them find it. And then in terms of making sure text, images, other multimedia are accessible, always run your courses through Ally's report. We will do that as the peer review committee when we are reviewing new course designs as well. And then I created a couple different resources for people to use, including a checklist of basic accessibility problems and how to remediate them, and then individual task cards that have individual ways to meet accessibility. And both of those are linked at the end of the handout. Okay, and then the second part of course design is having clear goals. This is where your instructional expertise comes into play. Looking at measurable outcomes and purposeful activities. And again, this comes back to, you're probably doing this already, so you don't necessarily need to do it. But one of the compulsory standards that you have to meet is that your goals and objectives are clearly written and measurable. One of the things I did not too long ago was I took one of my upcoming courses. I put my syllabus, all of my topics, all of my assessments, and then also my current course objectives into ChatGPT. And I said, help me help me make sure that these are actionable, measurable objectives. And in a few instances, it actually rewrote it. I expanded on that by taking all of that information and putting it into Notebook LM, and then asked Notebook LM to help me draft module objectives. I don't want to write learning objectives. I know what I need them to know, but I hate writing it. So this was a way that, again, I modified some of them. I didn't just take it and copy and paste it, but it helped take the burden off of me. And then again, as you can see in all of my courses, I always have a separate page for the course and the module learning objectives. Arizona State has a fantastic learning objectives builder as well that I have the link for in the back of the notes if you need assistance that way. So, ways that you can make sure your course activities are designed to clearly demonstrate their connection to learning outcomes. You can take individual content or assessments, point them to the CLOs and the MLOs. So for example, in that National Lewis example that I showed, they have a page that we have to fill out where the learning outcome aligned to the activities. You've got the activity and the assignment, and you're telling what module or what course outcome it connects to. I don't do this on my own regularly because I don't think students read it, but I just make sure I have all the course outcomes and the module outcomes available each time. I've taught in graduate programs for 16 years. Never once in 16 years has anyone ever said to me, how does this connect to? So, okay, interaction and collaboration, all about engaging learners. We're talking about interactive elements, evaluation criteria that's clear, and building community in your online courses. So here is your compulsory standard. Course activities include interactive components or elements. Many different ways you can do this. One of the things that I did was I created matching games, super easy to do, using some AI programs and coding programs combined. If that is too high level for some people to insert, something else you can do is you can design your page within Blackboard, and up on the left-hand side, you're going to see a suggested page layout where Blackboard Ultra will use AI to rearrange your page and chunk it. There's a little box there that says include knowledge check. And basically with the knowledge check, it will take all the content that's on your Blackboard page and it will create little knowledge check questions on the bottom of your page for you. If you don't want the AI to create your knowledge check, you want to do it just on your own, there is a way to insert that in Blackboard as well. But again, it's a short interactive assessment that helps the students self-check how their learning is going. You're not grading these. You can see the results of them, but you're not grading them. Other interactive components as well. I create small informal polls that have to connect to the topics that we're talking about, but they're not related to course material per se. So for example, in one of my courses, I teach a course on social media and emerging technologies. We talk about crowdsourcing, and one of the questions I asked on the crowdsourcing module is, have you ever contributed to a GoFundMe campaign? These are just small ways to connect with students. They can see how their peers have responded. And then sometimes in my weekly recap emails, I'll reference this and say, hey, according to what I saw on the poll this week, half of you haven't started your final project yet, get on it. So again, they're just small, informal, interactive components. Next compulsory standard, learners are provided a rubric or scoring guidelines to evaluate participation in interaction. So again, not just a rubric for the assignment, but a rubric or guidelines telling them how you're going to judge if they've participated and interacted. With mine, this is part of my rubric for my blog responses. It's worth 10 points. They have to do to your standards, so they're 5 points each. And I tell them they're substantive, not simply I agree, it adds content, and so on. I also have language in my syllabus related to this. Again, I have course community expectations outlined in my syllabus so they know what is expected of them. And then I have additional information again in my syllabus. This is what you're going to be doing. This is how I expect you to interact with your classmates. Assessment should obviously tie directly to your objectives. And this is a no-brainer. We want to make sure that we can see in your online course that you have a grading scale, whether that's in your syllabus or rubrics. With the rubrics, I suggest having them both in line, which, for example, if you've got a rubric for a discussion post, you have your discussion post, and then you've got the rubric connected to it. That's what in line means. I also include them in several locations. So remember with mine, the way my module's laid out, the final page in the module is the rubrics that have to do with any assignments within this module. I also take all of my rubrics and I put them in one gigantic Google Doc, and I put them in my ongoing course materials so that they're getting the rubric in several different locations. Doesn't cost me anything to do it. It takes 5 minutes to add it in another place. It's helping set the path for my students, not assessing on if they can find it. Formative, summative assessments, not surprising. In your online course, we need to see these throughout. We also need to see multiple types of assessment. So whether they are unit quizzes, final projects, self-checks, or the like, we need to actually see this. This standard down here is not a compulsory standard. It's one of the extra standards that we hope people will try and meet. Basically saying that assessments are designed to mimic authentic environments, case studies, portfolios. Orientation and communication. Learner support is the final area of the compulsory standards that you need to take a look at. Comprehensive orientation, absolutely. Making sure your contact information is available for students and having clear policies. So I can't emphasize how much it is beneficial to your students to have a Start Here module. I went ahead, and this is linked in your handout at the end, created a 2-page flyer that has all sorts of different ideas for things that you can put in an orientation module or Start Here module. You don't need to have them all, but again, it'll show you the importance of all the things that can be there to help your students and onboard them. So this is an interesting standard that we sometimes end up catching people missing when they come to us for a peer review. Orientation materials need to explain how to navigate both the LMS and the course. A lot of times we see that instructors don't include the how to navigate the LMS. That is pretty easy to do. Remember in my pre-course email, I told them, go to Canvas, look for this specific name. That's a way to start. Once they get in, I could say language here, basically with a little screenshot, and this comes out of Blackboard Ultra. Navigate the course by clicking on the next button located in the upper right-hand corner of each page. I have to put a parentheses there. Or, I could, shouldn't say or, there's a contents button on the left side of your Blackboard Ultra screen. I can just have a quick note of there saying, click the contents button located in the upper left-hand corner to expand it and see all the pages. This is content that can be in your Start Here module, and it can carry over from course to course to course. You have one page that just basically says, here's how to navigate the LMS. How to navigate the course. One thing I like to do is I like to create a course overview video. And in my pre-course communication that I send a week before the course begins, I give them my name. I tell them what to call me. I don't need them to call me professor. I am not yet a doctor, and even if I was, I don't need to be called Dr. Zumpano. I tell them, call me Nicole. It helps in my situation with graduate students. They are my peers. So it might be a little bit different in a community college, but again, that's completely up to a professor to decide. It's just a matter of tell your students how you want to be referenced. Don't wait for them to have to be corrected. I had an administrator once, back when I was in a K-12 setting, that would correct people without telling them ahead of time, and it just is not good for morale. But in here, I tell them again, online asynchronous course, we're using Canvas, these are the course dates, here's how you get to it, and here's the name of it. I record in 19, in this case it's usually between 15 minutes, 15 and 18. This one was a 19-minute screencast that walks them through my course in the LMS. This is what it looks like. Here's how you get to the modules. Here's how you navigate. And I walk them through. And then I give them some other details as well. One of the things I'm kicking around for this upcoming semester that begins in March is I'm considering hosting an optional Zoom. I don't host any Zoom now because all of my classes are asynchronous, but I'm still kicking around. What I might do is give them this course overview video, but also say, if you'd rather watch me do it live and just ask me questions, hop on this optional half an hour and just walk them through it. Just again, for another way to show learner support. Still kicking it around. Roadmaps. I mentioned this earlier. So again, remember, orientation materials explain how to navigate, in this case, the course. So remember, Michigan State, it always started with a roadmap. We give a description of what the unit's going to be about, the learning objectives, how much time we think it's going to take for them to explore all of our materials, and how much time we think it's going to take for them to create and share. And we're very clear about saying these are estimates based on what we know about how people learn, and also this will vary dependent on your comfortability with the content and with the technology. Checklist. I used to do this. This is an example from one of my this one was National Louis. I don't do this anymore, but what I used to do in the modules is give them first you're going to do this, then you're going to do this, then you're going to do this, then you're going to do this. I found it was a lot of work for me to do this, and I honestly felt it was a little bit more impersonal. So now I replace that with my module overview videos. And again, remember, these are only 3 to 5 minutes long. They're in my listen section in every module. I make sure that I appear in the corner just so that they can, learn to associate a face with my voice. And I just basically say, here's our topic. I go through some of the pages. Here's what I want you to do. Contact information for the instructor is easy to find. That's a compulsory standard. It's got to be in your course. Many people have it in the syllabus. I also recommend having a separate page in the LMS. There's no reason not to have it. Again, as a reminder, make sure that you are relaying to your students acceptable communication methods. If you don't want them texting you, don't give them your cell number. If if you prefer email, give them, I prefer to be reached by email. Tell them how to address you, whether you want to be called by your first name, doctor, professor, or so on. And then also make sure they understand your methods for collecting and returning work, what they can expect, and expected response time. With your response time, always overestimate, and then over deliver. I know there's a better term for it, and meet those. I always say 24 hours, and if I'm being honest, I'm answering emails within an hour or two of getting out because they're quick. Okay, you can also, you have to have your course and institutional policies clear and easy to find. Many people just leave these in the syllabus. I do that as well. You can put them in your orientation module, a separate page in the LMS. I don't, because my LMS is so packed already. And again, students will know where to find them. These are just reminders for you that Triton in the portal, actually this one's on the public-facing website, has a course expectations page. And then on the CTE's internal SharePoint page, there is the syllabus template. Make sure you're using the official, either using the official one or make sure you have everything that's in the official one in your own version. Another compulsory standard, course materials use widely accepted formats. Basically what this means is you want to keep your documents and your resources in programs that students have access to. That's pretty easy to do. If they have access to Google or Microsoft products, you want to have your materials in those formats. Do your very, very best to keep your documents in their original format. Don't convert things to PDFs. PDFs are a nightmare to remediate for accessibility purposes. And oftentimes I'll hear professors say, well, I put it in a PDF so they can't edit it. Well, technically they could edit it, if they had, right, Adobe Pro. So put it in, keep it in your Word document and put view only, or if you're in Google, Google has the option to let students or anybody, viewers, not download it and not print it, but it keeps it in the standard format. And then one of the final areas that you have to include for the compulsory standards is to have learners give them the opportunity to give you formative feedback on your course design, your content, and your presentation of course delivery. This is not your end of the course Triton official evaluation. This is something separate. I give myself my students, I should say, an extremely detailed survey. You can see how long it is. Basically with mine, I'm asking everything from, did you watch the course overview video? What were your thoughts? I use an assignment tracker in a spreadsheet. What did you think about that? Did you find the weekly email recaps helpful? What about the course overview videos? So I'm asking them all of these yes/no questions. I require those, but after each yes/no question, I have an optional, not required, open-ended field where they could say, where I say any additional comments that you want me to know about these things. And these are gold. I edit a lot of what I do or how I present content based on these. They are anonymous. That's another key feature. They should be anonymous as well. Some instructors don't want to do this much detail, but they have to have some sort of mechanism within their course, their online course, that allows the students to give them feedback. Another way to do this is you can ask a mid-course survey. How are things working for you? Are you able to understand the content the way that I'm presenting it, or so on? That's another option. All right, so the overall takeaway of all of those compulsory standards, your design matters, accessibility matters, community matters, and support matters. And all of those compulsory examples are ways that you can make your course usable for your students. And that's it. I don't know, let me see. I'm gonna go ahead and, Laura, stop recording. And then if you have any questions.